So N'Faly Dante was at the NBA Draft Combine, received an invitation. Not surprising, he had the third longest wingspan in the draft class behind one other guy and, of course, Zach Edey from Purdue. And, frankly, I wish we could have gotten to see N'Faly Dante against Zach Edey. That would have been a fun time. But we did not, of course. And Dante, though he's not as good a college player as Edey, he's really, really good, though, as we all know. I think he projects as a better pro. But. N'Faly Dante gives me some vibes of Jordan Bell or Kenny Wooten, who were both outstanding college players for the Ducks. Didn't really do anything in the NBA. Jordan Bell had a moment, had a season with the Warriors, got to the NBA Finals in, I think it was 2018, 17, like on those Durant Warrior teams. He was a part of it. He did some nice things. He has not worked out in the NBA. Kenny Wooten never made any noise in the NBA. I think he's playing in the G League somewhere. Jordan Bell might be as well. I haven't looked very recently. But what those two guys have in common with N'Faly Dante is no one is questioning that they have got NBA traits with their size and athleticism, or that they aren't ready to play defensively. The question is, what can they do with the offensive end? And Dante puts up great numbers on offense. If you read his NBA draft scouting profile, they see what I see as well, which is he is physically imposing to college players, and that's how he gets a lot of his points. He moves guys out of the way. His footwork is okay. His touch is fine, but he does a lot of damage on offensive rebounds, pick and roll dunks, and putbacks. And by the way, that's fine. That's what big men do in the NBA. There is a place for that. There's a guy on the Celtics, I forget his name. He's a tall, skinny white dude who I don't think shoots the ball incredibly well, but he has a role. And Dante, if he can stay healthy, can have that sort of role. I think the NBA draft scouting community's got him mocked as like the 44th best player or prospect in the NBA draft. But, Bell's shortcoming, like he was the quintessential backup four. He can pass a little, block shots, set screens, be, a top of the key guy. But what was his biggest shortcoming? Look, I don't know all the details of why it didn't work out with the Warriors, but when you'd watch him play, he wasn't a threat on offense. And N'Faly Dante in the NBA is not a threat on offense. Like if you watch his post moves in college, they need to be more refined. They are largely predicated on being bigger, stronger, and more physical than the guys who's guarding him. And, he's got a couple of decent moves, but it is not the most fluid and dynamic offensive repertoire. It's, of course, incredibly effective, and it's why I want him to come back to Oregon, but I think he should want to come back to Oregon. Can he get drafted as the player he is right now? Yes, he can. And by the way, I'll remind those who didn't hear me the last time I said this, just because Dante went to the NBA draft combine does not mean he is going into the draft. And he was interviewed recently about the situation with the medical waiver, and he just kind of said, it is what it is. It seems like he's waiting to see if he gets approved, and if he doesn't, then he'll go to the NBA. But if he does, I would think he would go back, and I think he could benefit tremendously. The biggest thing that I think he needs to be able to add is just like a 10 to 15 foot reliable jumper. Can he add that? He doesn't have the prettiest shot. It's not ugly. It's just it's okay. It's a little jerky, but he can get it off clean. He's got a high release. If he introduces that into his game, I think that completely changes him as a draft prospect. And where you get drafted affects how much money you make and all sorts of other things. I mean, that's mostly what it is. Like it can affect perception or, how much you're expected to play or, what's needed of you or anything like that. But the biggest thing is the higher you get drafted, the more money that you can make initially on that first contract. And if that's a consideration for Dante, then going back to Oregon is in his best interest. And there's still no update on the waiver with the NCAA. It appears that he should get it approved. So he played 6 games before getting injured and was out for the year in the 2020-2021 season. That was the COVID year. And Oregon, went to the tournament. First round game against VCU got canceled because of COVID issues with the Rams. And then they went and played the 2 seed Iowa and blew them out. That was the Eugene Omoruyi, Chris Duarte, LJ Figueroa team. The team was nice. That team was nice. Then they got blasted by USC in the Sweet 16. And that was out of character for Dana Altman in the NCAA tournament. But that year, Dante only played 6 games, and the requirement or the threshold to be unable to burn a red shirt or utilize a red shirt rather is 9 games. But that's in a full season, so that might be what the NCAA is looking at is, hey, did Oregon play a full slate of games? Or was it enough for us to keep the same marker? Because they played 28 games that year. They went 21-7. Whereas this past season, they played 36. So that's probably where the NCAA is at a crossroads. But if that gets approved, it's obviously in Oregon's best interest. That is unquestioned. But the point that I'm trying to make here today, and hopefully I've communicated this well enough, or I'm not very good at my job, it would be good for N'Faly Dante to go back for another year because Jordan Bell, I think, could have had another season of eligibility. I know Kenny Wooten had more eligibility, and he would have benefited tremendously, even more than Bell. Bell at least got drafted and had a role on an NBA team. Kenny Wooten did not make any sort of noise. Guy is a crazy athlete and ridiculous shot blocker. And if he'd gone back to Oregon, worked on his offensive game a little bit more, I think he would have had better success, at least early on in the NBA, and that can establish a better foundation for you as you go forward in your career. So I think if Dante can work on a couple post moves, make him a little bit more fluid, expand his range, because basically everything he scores, like if you visualize one of those shot charts they show on ESPN from time to time or TNT, like, oh, where's so-and-so hitting his shots? Dante would just have a collection of green circles right around the basket, right? And that's where he's lethal. And that's where he's still going to score most of his points. But it's hard to improve that aspect of your game that is a significant shortcoming in terms of his NBA prospects. It's a lot harder to work on that if you're not playing as much in the NBA because you don't have that element of your game as refined. Whereas in college, he would be Oregon's starting center. He would get plenty of touches and would have the opportunity to showcase that a little bit more. Now, you'd have to balance that, of course, if you're Dana Altman with, hey, we need to be taking good shots, and is that really, a good shot? But certainly Dante, incredibly hard worker. I think he can get that into the fold, and if he does, he can be, he could be a scary good scorer. He could be really, really effective at the college level. But I think he helps his NBA draft prospects, which already look pretty good. He's got a good draft grade. I think it was around 92 because of all the physical traits he has. Just needs that offense to be a little bit sharper. If he does that, he could work his way into being a first-round pick because, as we all know, you can't teach his size, wingspan, athleticism, motor, and just love for the game. He's got all of that stuff. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, N'Faly Dante will be back for one more year. We wait another day. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.